We're going to start our new feature that Ray mentioned at the top, where I was, what I was doing, how I impacted the global universe way back when. So we'll put on our cozy cardigans and our fuzzy slippers, light our pipes, and tell stories to each other. And since this was Ray's idea, you're going to go first. So what story are you going to share with everyone, Ray?
All right. And we're calling this There I Was. And for those of us who are in the Air Force, even though I did not fly in the Air Force, there's sort of the old joke about the Air Force pilots, and they're holding up their hands because pilots always have to talk with their hands. You can say, there I was, upside down and taking his picture and all that stuff. So, but there I was actually working for Jim Caruso in Australia, and I had just arrived as the brand new Defense Attache. And I tell you, when I got to Australia, what I knew about Australia was Crocodile Dundee and kangaroos and Joint Strike Fighters. Everything in Australia wants to kill you, and something about bloomin' onions and Outback Steakhouse. That was pretty much my level of knowledge about Australia. But I
didn't know that at the time.
Yes, well, I'm sure you would have hired me had you known. But I mean, I did have my charm and my good looks. So I got there, and immediately we went into this major exercise called Talisman Sabre, where we bring, tens of thousands of troops to Australia. It's Australia's largest exercise. It's every 2 years. It's biannual, and so I would, actually, you and I, Jim, went out on a CV-22 mission to visit an amphib, I believe. And so it was a very exciting time, a lot going on. But at the end of the exercise, tragically, a CV-22, a Marine Corps CV-22 went down off the coast of Queensland, and 3 Marines were unable to get out of the aircraft and went to the bottom of the ocean. And it was an awful, tragic thing. And the Australians just really impressively leapt into motion because they wanted to do their part. And so immediately I get a phone call from the First Assistant Secretary for International Policy. And he says, look, Minister Maurice Payne wants to talk to Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis immediately.
As a defense minister.
The Minister of Defense, Maurice Payne. And so can you get Secretary Mattis on the phone, because we want to be able to help. And they had already put the dive ship underway. They were already way out in front, but she of course wanted to be able to express condolences and ask what Australia could do to help. And I said, okay, absolutely. And of course, so this is my first big crisis as Defense Attache. And I pull out my phone and I realize when I got there, they kind of wiped my phone and they gave me a brand new phone. So I didn't have any of the phone numbers of my predecessor in my phone. And so I didn't know how to call anybody. And so, I'm sort of sitting there staring at this phone thinking, well, how should I even start this process of trying to get the Secretary of Defense of the United States on the phone with the Minister of Defense from Australia? So I had worked at the Pentagon long enough to sort of know who was who in the zoo. And I started by calling the Pentagon switchboard because I could find them in the yellow pages, basically. You can find the Pentagon switchboard. So I called the Pentagon switchboard, and I knew that I couldn't just ask for the Secretary of Defense's number. So I asked them to connect me to the National Military Command Center. But I didn't say that. Just like our guest, I used military acronyms. So I said, can you connect me to the NMCC? And they said, I'm sorry, we don't know what that is. And I said, this is the Pentagon switchboard, right? Because I just thought, if you're at the Pentagon, you probably know what the National Military Command Center is. A pretty major part of the Pentagon. But anyway, I spelled it out for them, and they looked around and they said, well, we're not really sure which of these phone numbers you'd want to talk to. So I finally said, well, the Emergency Action Cell has people in it all the time. There's always somebody there at the phone. They found that phone number, so they connected me there. I managed to sort of leap through a couple of other, can you get me to this office? Can you get me to this office? And I kept getting closer and closer to the Secretary's office. And a few minutes later, I actually had the Secretary's scheduler on the phone. And he says, oh, well, actually, that's you've got good timing because Secretary Mattis is about to walk in the door. I'm expecting him in probably the next 5 minutes. So, of course, I called back to the First Assistant Secretary for International Policy in Australia. And I said, yeah, I've got it. No problem. You know, I was able to get Secretary Mattis on the phone. Can you get the minister on the phone in the next, say, 5 or 10 minutes? Because, you know, that I'm so well connected that I was able to get this whole thing solved for you in a few minutes. He had no clue that I had started the process by calling the Pentagon switchboard.
And that's what makes us a superpower, Ray.
The envy of the world, Jim. The envy of the world.
Absolutely.